My name is Damon Keller. For 12 years I was the head of strategy at Hallis & Dean, a Fortune 500 logistics firm based in Chicago. Not a flashy job, no viral headlines, but I was the one you called when margins got tight, when vendors started pulling out, when operations dragged like dead weight. I fixed things quietly, efficiently, and usually before anyone in the C-suite even noticed there was a problem. I didn't wear tailored suits. I didn't play golf with board members. I didn't go out drinking with the tech team or send motivational Slack messages to boost morale. I just delivered. So when the new CEO, Callum Rhodes, walked into my office with his shiny cufflinks and a consultant in tow, I knew before he said anything that my time was up. "We're restructuring, Damon," he said. "Flattening leadership. More agile. More digital forward." He used every keyword from a TED Talk, and none from a balance sheet. The consultant, a guy named Lucas with teeth too white for someone in operations, gave a small nod like he'd been waiting for this moment all week. I looked at the severance packet in Callum's hand. 12 years, reduced to a stapled folder and a fake apology. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded once and stood up. My exit interview lasted 19 minutes. I counted every one of them in my head. They offered me 4 months of severance, extended benefits, and an NDA they hoped I'd sign without reading. I thanked them for their generosity, walked out, and didn't look back. I went home, poured myself a drink, and opened my laptop, because what Callum didn't know, or maybe just didn't care to check, was that Hallis & Dean's warehouse operations, the backbone of our entire logistics network, ran on contracts I had written. Me, not legal, not procurement. Me, because 6 years ago, when we were bleeding money and losing major distribution hubs, I offered a solution: privatize the warehouses, form shell companies, buy the buildings, lease them back. I took the risk personally. I used my own credit, my own name, my own sweat to negotiate those deals. The company agreed. We didn't disclose ownership in the contracts, just vendor IDs and generic LLCs tied to PO boxes in Delaware. I kept the rents low, well below market, to keep operations stable. Nobody asked questions because the metrics looked good. Nobody read the fine print because the buildings ran smoothly. And now, 12 years of loyalty had been traded in for a buzzword-laced restructuring plan. My hands were steady as I scrolled through the lease folders on my hard drive. 3 key hubs, one in Reno, one outside Pittsburgh, and the largest in Joliet, Illinois, all strategically located, all owned by shell companies under my name, all due for lease renewal in 5 weeks. 5 weeks. I sipped my drink and stared out at the cold skyline. "Let's see how agile you are under pressure, Callum." The next morning, I was already on a call with Sylvia Tran, my real estate attorney. "I've drafted new terms," she said matter-of-factly. "Market rates, plus an escalation clause for inflation. Add a non-renewal penalty," I said. 6 months rent if they miss the deadline." She whistled, softly. "They're not going to like that. I'm not aiming to be liked. You want me to send it now?" "No, wait until the last possible day before the renewal deadline." She hesitated. "I want pressure," I added. I kept to my usual routine. Woke up at 6, went for a run, made my coffee, read logistics trade reports like I still had skin in the game. And then I started getting the texts. First it was Robert from Reno. "You hear what's going on? Layoffs at the ground level. New efficiency guy cut the loading team in half." Then Helena from Pittsburgh. "They stopped paying hazard bonuses. Turnover's already a mess. You left at the right time." I didn't respond to either of them. Not yet. The reports confirmed what I already suspected. Lucas, the consultant, was implementing the kind of changes that looked great on paper and destroyed operations in real life. The kind of cost-cutting that caused late shipments, inventory loss, and burnout. Then I got a message from Ray, a supervisor I trusted at Joliet. "New regional manager, outsourced night security to save costs. Trucks got hit last night. Thousands in product lost." I sat back and stared at my ceiling for a full minute. They were imploding faster than I expected. I wasn't even done yet. 2 weeks after my exit, I received a LinkedIn message from Lucas, the consultant. "Hope you're doing well, Damon. Just wondering if you could help clarify some vendor paperwork. We've noticed some gaps in documentation for the Joliet property." I stared at the screen, clicked on his profile. MBA from Columbia, former Bain, no real-world ops experience, just slide decks and polished arrogance. I didn't respond. The next day, a certified letter arrived from Hallis and Dean's legal team requesting full documentation on all vendor-related arrangements made under your oversight. I forwarded it to Sylvia. "They're starting to sweat," she said, amused. Do I reply? "Yeah, with the public records. Redacted, let them work for it." By the time week 4 rolled around, I received a call from Callum himself. "Damon," he said, overly casual, "it's been a few weeks, just wanted to check in, see how you're doing." "Doing great," I said, staring out my kitchen window. He laughed, a little forced. "Listen, we've run into some hiccups on the facility side. There are some gaps in the lease paperwork. I was hoping you could walk us through the structure you used." I said nothing. "Damon, I'm not under contract anymore, Callum." "Well, sure, but anything I did for Hallis and Dean during my tenure is in the shared drives." He cleared his throat. "Some of the vendor info appears obscured. That's a compliance issue," I said. "You might want to escalate it." Silence. "I've got another call," I added. "Good luck with the renewals." I hung up. 3 days before the deadline, Sylvia sent the new lease terms. Market rate plus penalties. No more, sweetheart. 2 hours later, Callum called again. "I just got off the phone with legal. Damon, these rates are insane." "They're fair," I said, reflective of market shifts since the last agreement. "You're gouging us." "No, you're reacting late. This isn't how loyalty works. You restructured me out of a job." A long pause. "This could damage our bottom line." "Then you should have read the contracts." They signed the Joliet renewal with gritted teeth. Sylvia called it the most reluctant signature I've ever witnessed. Reno stalled. Pittsburgh tried to push back with their legal team, but in the end, they all signed. They had no choice. Moving warehouses would have cost them millions and wrecked their shipping timelines for Q4. I knew the bottlenecks. I'd built around them. They called it exploitation. I called it and I wasn't done. 1 week later, I flew to Atlanta, met with Martin Reyes, VP of Operations at Corespan, one of Hallis and Dean's biggest competitors. We'd crossed paths at enough industry summits to share mutual respect. He leaned forward across the conference table. "Let me guess, you've got leverage." "I've got insight," I corrected. "I heard about the Joliet thing," he said. "You've caused quite a stir." "Just exercising ownership rights," I said, sliding him a folder. It contained detailed inefficiencies, projected failures, and gaps in Hallis and Dean's infrastructure, every one of them worsened by Callum's restructuring plan. Martin flipped through the pages. "You still in contact with their facility leads?" "Unofficially." "Some are looking to jump ship." He set the folder down. "What do you want, Damon?" "Consulting retainer, no title, no office, just results." "And what do we get?" "A surgical roadmap to take 5% of their market share within 6 months." He sat back and smiled. "Welcome aboard. Let the next phase begin." Martin didn't waste time. Within 3 days I was in a war room with his top logistics analysts going over routing maps and vendor dependencies. Hallis and Dean looked bulletproof from a distance, but I knew where the armor was thin. They'd centralized too fast, swapped regional discretion for algorithmic oversight, stripped local managers of authority. Everything funneled through 2 executive nodes, Chicago and Dallas, which meant if you disrupted the right flow at the right time, everything else would stutter. "We start with Joliet," I said, "not to sabotage, to study." Martin nodded. "You want to learn their failure patterns in real time." "They're already failing," I said. "We just need to record it." My job was unofficial. I didn't sign a single Corespan document. I didn't get a title. They paid my LLC directly. I was invisible on paper, but every major decision started going through me, quietly. 3 weeks later, I met with Trina Chang, Hallis and Dean's former Midwest regional manager. She'd been pushed out 6 months ago during the first wave of digital simplification. I offered her a contract. She didn't hesitate. By the following Monday, she was auditing Corespan's Midwest operations. By Friday, she'd already identified 2 opportunities to undercut Hallis and Dean on freight consolidation out of Missouri. Ones they wouldn't see coming because they'd fired everyone who knew how it used to work. We moved fast, launched a pilot route at 3% below Hallis and Dean's average pricing. Clients noticed. Calls started coming in, first curious, then concerned. By the end of the quarter, Corespan's Midwest volume was up 11%. Meanwhile, I kept getting messages from the inside. Ray from Joliet texted me a screenshot. Shipment delays, 2 days behind schedule. Product returns up 9%. Helena emailed me anonymously, said her new district manager had never set foot in a warehouse before, phoned everything in. Even Lucas messaged me again. Damon, I know things were tense, but could we talk off the record? I think we misjudged some of your... I deleted it. You don't fire the builder and then ask him how the foundation works. Then came the quarterly earnings call. I streamed it from my phone while walking Lakeshore Drive. The tone was defensive. Callum used the word transitional turbulence 7 times in 30 minutes. He talked about long-term vision, about digital transformation, about unlocking operational efficiencies, but the numbers told a different story. Warehousing costs were up 18%, client retention was down 7%, freight error rates had doubled, and then something new. A question from an analyst. Can you explain the recent lease escalations on your core warehouse network? Callum hesitated, said it was due to market corrections, didn't mention me, didn't have to. Anyone paying attention could see the pressure points. Sylvia called that afternoon. You're about to get an offer, she said, from them. They're going to try to buy the buildings, or negotiate them back under the original terms. I paused. They're scared, I said. They should be, she replied. I reviewed my options. I could have sold, made enough to retire twice over, but I didn't want money. I wanted permanence. So I said no. Instead I invested, upgraded the Joliet facility, added biometric access, top-tier inventory systems, solar panels to reduce power costs. I spent money like I planned to keep it forever. Corespan offered to lease the space if Hollis and Dean ever walked. They wouldn't have to. They were locked in, but knowing someone else wanted it, that was leverage. Then came the pivot. I started working with vendors, smaller ones, the kind Hollis and Dean had dropped in favor of national contracts. They were still bitter. They dumped us over one late shipment, one said. 15 years of business gone. I remember. I told him. That was the quarter they hired Bain. I brought them into Corespan's pipeline. We built a new network around loyalty, not lowest price. Clients noticed, and they started talking, not in headlines but in meetings, quiet conversations. Why does Corespan seem more stable right now? Why are their deliveries more consistent? Because we built the opposite of Hollis and Dean's model, because we remembered what they forgot. 1 month later, I got a call from someone unexpected. Grant Morrow. He was Hollis and Dean's former COO, the one Callum replaced after the board shakeup. He didn't bother with small talk. I heard you've been busy. I've stayed engaged. I said. You're bleeding them dry. No, they're doing that themselves. He laughed quietly. You've got the board's attention. I'm sure I do. What are you going to do next? I looked out the window at my city. Build something that lasts, I said. He went quiet. Then if you ever decide to expand, give me a call. I didn't answer, just ended the call. The final blow wasn't something I orchestrated. It came from inside. A leaked email chain. An internal audit revealed that Callum had approved off-the-books incentives for a software vendor he used to consult for. Kickbacks masked as service credits, small amounts, but the kind that implied deeper rot. The board moved quickly. He resigned for personal reasons. Lucas vanished. The CFO was made interim CEO. Hollis and Dean issued a statement about refocusing on core operations. Translation: they'd realized too late what they'd dismantled. I didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. Just went back to work, built new routes, secured new leases, brought on 2 more people from the old crew, people who'd been overlooked, dismissed, replaced by slides and slogans. One day Ray called. Feels like the old days again, he said. No, I replied, it feels better. Because this time, we weren't building someone else's vision, we were building ours. 3 months after Callum stepped down, Hollis and Dean filed a regulatory disclosure. Buried in the footnotes, a projected $37 million shortfall in operational capacity due to facilities restructuring and vendor transition inefficiencies. That was the official line. The unofficial story was different. Corespan had just overtaken them as the #1 logistics partner in 2 of the 5 key retail sectors in the Midwest. Not because we were cheaper, because we were steady, reliable, human, I didn't need headlines to prove anything. I had inboxes full of thank you notes from warehouse leads who got their old jobs back, from vendors who'd signed their first long-term contracts in years, from clients who said the difference was night and day. And then there was the letter from Callum, typed, formal. He asked to meet, said he wanted to understand the full scope of what happened, said he wanted a frank conversation about leadership, mistakes, and second acts. I didn't respond. He'd had his act. He used it to cut corners and fire the people who made the engine run. There's nothing left to talk about. I kept my focus forward, launched a new initiative with CoreSpan regional cross-training for warehouse supervisors, aimed at restoring decision-making authority at the ground level. No more micromanaging from spreadsheets, no more forcing local teams to follow rules written by people who'd never lifted a pallet in their lives. It worked. Turnover dropped, late shipments decreased, employee referrals skyrocketed. One of the execs at CoreSpan asked me what I called the program. Common sense, I said. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. 6 months in, I walked the floor of the Joliet facility. Ray greeted me with a nod. The place was spotless, efficient, alive. You remember what this place looked like last year? He asked. I remember everything, I said. He pointed to a whiteboard near the loading dock. Handwritten notes from every shift lead. Problems, solutions, suggestions. No filters, no hierarchy. They started doing that on their own, Ray said. Feels like we got our voice back. That stuck with me. Voice, because that's what I lost when they let me go, and what I'd quietly taken back. I don't think about revenge anymore. That part's done. It came and went, wrapped in silence and paperwork, in escalated leases and nervous phone calls. Nobody saw it happen except the people who mattered, the ones who knew what was being built before it was torn down. Now I think about architecture, not building systems, people, foundations that don't need my name on a door to last. Every week I get a call from someone in the industry asking if we're hiring, not because they're out of work but because they're tired of working for people who don't understand what they do. I don't make promises, but I tell them the truth. We're building slow, we're building right. Last Friday Sylvia called. Did you hear? Hear what? Lucas filed for bankruptcy. His consultancy went under. I leaned back in my chair. Too bad, I said. She snorted. You're a terrible liar. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. Then what are you? Busy. That night, I stayed late at the Joliet site. I walked the perimeter, checked the locks, watched the trucks pull in, lights bright against the dark. I stood on the loading dock and watched the motion, the orchestrated moving parts that looked like chaos from the outside but weren't. Every step was intentional. Every crate, every scanner beep, every forklift turn meant something. That's what they never understood. That precision doesn't come from dashboards, it comes from care. When I left, the night team waved. I waved back. No need for speeches, no need for recognition, just the steady rhythm of something built to last. The kind of structure that doesn't fall when the wrong person sits in the big chair, because the foundation is deeper than ego, and stronger than ambition. I drove home with the window down, cool wind cutting across my face, the city behind me, the road ahead, quiet, measurable. 3 weeks after that night at Joliet, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a leather portfolio, old but well kept. Inside the folder, my original lease drafts for the Reno, Pittsburgh and Joliet sites, the ones I thought had been shredded. The handwriting in the margins was mine. The sticky note wasn't. Found in a forgotten drawer. Figured you'd want these back. No name. Just that. I stared at the note for a long time, then tucked the folder away. Some things aren't evidence. They're reminders. That same day, Trina called from St. Louis. She'd just wrapped her first month managing the southern route expansion for CoreSpan. Numbers are better than we projected, she said. Client retention is already up, and I've got vendors offering exclusivity. You want more budget? No, I want more bandwidth. We're growing faster than expected. I smiled. Careful, I said. You'll get promoted into irrelevance. Not a chance, she said. I like the ground floor. That phrase stayed with me. The ground floor. That's where the real work happens. The real insight. The real consequences. Executives make decisions in conference rooms. Operators live with them in real time. When you forget that, Everything else collapses. That's what Callum never understood. 2 months later, I got invited to speak at a logistics conference in Denver. I declined. They asked again, said they'd waive the fee, fly me out, give me top billing. I still said no. I wasn't interested in being a case study. I wasn't interested in explaining how to dismantle a company from the outside. This wasn't revenge theater, it was correction. On a quiet Thursday I sat down with Martin Reyes at Corespan HQ. He poured 2 coffees and slid a contract across the table. "You've earned this," he said. "Permanent role, EVP of strategy, name it." I looked at the paper but didn't touch it. I said I didn't want titles. I reminded him, "You've proven yourself. I didn't do it for that. So what do you want?" I thought for a moment. "I want this to keep working without me." He raised an eyebrow. "Then write yourself out." I nodded. He understood. Over the next 3 months, I did just that. Hired replacements, trained teams, built playbooks, delegated without ego, and then I stepped back, not out, just back, watched the machine run without needing my hands on the levers, and it did, beautifully. One morning, I got an email, subject line, "Thought you'd want to see this." It was a press release. Hollis & Dean had been acquired, a European firm, mid-tier, known for consolidating aging logistics outfits and stripping them for parts. Callum wasn't mentioned. Neither was Lucas. The brand would remain for a year, then be absorbed. No legacy, no resurrection, just an expiration date. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of scotch and no music, just the air, just the quiet. The revenge story was over. This wasn't a movie. There was no final scene, no dramatic confrontation, just absence. A company that forgot its spine, a group of people who built something better, and a man who once wrote leases in the dark, now watching the future unfold, without needing to control it. A few days later, I stopped by the Joliet site. Ray met me at the gate. "You hear the news?" he asked. I did. He grinned. "Feels like we won." "We didn't win," I said. "They just lost." "Still feels good." "Yeah," I said. "It does." We stood there in the early light. Trucks moving, radios crackling, the hum of motion, and beneath it all, silence, not emptiness. Completion, the quiet that comes when everything you built no longer needs you to keep standing. I got back in my car, started the engine, took one last look at the warehouse. Steel, concrete, purpose, not just a building, a reminder that sometimes the cleanest revenge isn't about taking someone down, it's about rising so steadily, so quietly, that when they finally look up, you're already out of reach.